Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez.
And Rohi Zachariah.
And together we are the Weekly Jargon. And we are absent Abel Perez, but again, we look forward to seeing him next week. I know he's out on business call.
Yeah.
We will certainly get him back here. But anyhow, we wanted to kind of start off today with some topics. But before we jump into those topics, we do have our main list of topic, which is the Neighborhood Watch.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had an opportunity to participate in that yesterday. Very active here in our community. Kind of wanted to get your take, and we'll dive into, again, these are opinions of what we feel. I mean, obviously, we have some data to back that too. But we want to kind of get a take on how a neighborhood watch, are they effective? Do they bring some type of rapport with the community in order to feel safe, trust amongst its neighbors, and also just to kind of get a feel of what's going on with your public safety officers and what have you. But before we do that, Rohi, we have a little tradition here, and we're going to go through one of these questions that randomly and just start throwing something out to see if we can break some ice. Hopefully, if we have viewers here for the first time, this is what we do. We kind of go through current events, whether they're here in the city, the nation. Sometimes we go outside of that, but we try to keep it local so that we have that presence, that resonates with you. Yeah. But anyhow, we're going to go and start off with this question. These are random questions that we picked out. Is there anything that would prompt you to leave this country and live abroad? It couldn't be at a better time, right? So that's a hell of a question, and this goes for you as well. So if you're seeing us for the first time, feel free to comment, especially if you're on Facebook and or YouTube. Feel free to comment. Let us know. Again, I'll repeat that question: is there anything that would prompt you to leave this country and live abroad? Rohi, I'll throw that back.
I feel like
to you.
we've just become the View, and everybody's going to say, because of Trump, I'm leaving this country. I'm going to Canada. But no. In all seriousness, I think to formally leave the country and take up a residence outside of it, I think it would be something dramatic. I mean, it would have to be something to where maybe a war has broken out, to where the fear of my family and their safety. But I would think more seriously. I mean, as a kid, there was I don't remember what grade. It was probably like 4th or 5th grade. One of the teachers had brought up the topic of nuclear weapons, and they brought up the map of if a nuclear bomb had gone off in Fresno, the radius and everything, and then the blast radius and the nuclear fallout and all these things. And I remember at that moment it did prompt, I said as a kid, a lot of fear as to, kind of the turmoil in the world of all these weapons in the world, and if they were to go off, all of a sudden this whole area would be uninhabitable for generations, So that'd be probably the only thing, is something maybe dramatic like that, where it's like, I just can't live here anymore. I got to leave. So.
But that would be the only reason why.
No, I love this country.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Well, I mean, before I answer my question, I will say this. I read an article this morning of several things happening outside of the U.S. that we may not be aware of as Americans, right? But one of the interesting things that came up on that was how affluent families in America are investing in this Swiss colony or Swiss property where they're buying up land. Prior to a lot of this political climate, you didn't see a lot of that happening. But over the last several months, sales have gone up. Now, that leads me to believe that, hey, well, if some of these folks that have money are investing in these foreign countries, I mean, you begin to think and say, well, wait a minute, is something really happening here that we're blind, we're not able to see, we can't see it, right? Like maybe other people that have inside, right? And we all know that there's inside trading.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to believe that it's a myth, then that's on you. But we do believe that there's inside trading to some extent. Obviously, people have been caught and they've been fined and what have you. So what's to say there isn't someone that knows something inside of how climates, whether they're political and or economic, can certainly but again, I'm not saying that's the reason why.
Are you giving hints here, Jose?
But if these are articles written outside of what we are exposed to, then obviously it's good to kind of pay attention to those things. Now, do I have the economic resources to just say, hey, let's go ahead and move out? Do you think I can get my family convinced? Do you think I can get my wife convinced and other family members to say, hey, it's time to go? That would be very difficult. I think we've already established our roots here. We certainly love this country. This country has been a country of opportunity. So it would be very difficult. I think we'd be some of the last people to leave because we fought hard, right? We fight hard. And we're in the political system, whether it's local. We want to make sure that we're always looking after our community and our constituency, our residents, right? We want to make sure that to what we can only, I mean, we only have so much that we can do anyway. So, but outside of us, the powers lie beyond us. But it was interesting to see that again in Switzerland, there was a lot of Americans buying up either land or specific investments in property. That was interesting. So the question, I didn't want to circle and circumvent that. Would there be anything? Well, there would have to be a catastrophic economic event and or something that environmentally just would make it very dangerous for us to live here. That would be the only reason. Okay. And at this time, I don't think that's happened yet. So we're good.
Good.
So now that we broke the ice, hey, if you have a comment, by all means, let us know what you would think. Again, is there anything that would prompt you to leave this country and live abroad? And to many people, they do. I mean, I hate to continue to stick on this thing, but to many people, they retire and then some want to go live south of the border because their dollar extends more. Some will go to Europe. I mean, I think it's more expensive. I personally think it's expensive. Some may go somewhere else, right? But to leave this country, maybe Canada. I think Mexico and Canada would be the most ideal places. But Mexico would certainly be where your dollar would extend more. All right. That being said, the topic. Let's get down to what we're. Yesterday, you had an opportunity to attend a neighborhood watch alongside the mayor and other prominent people in the community. Now, Rohi, can you tell me what your experience was and tell me what the nature of the neighborhood watch was? Yeah,
so this is the first one I got to attend, and you know it's good because it gives the community, and you know, obviously when we're saying community, it's more of like, I would say almost like a block party, because you're not looking at a very large area. You're trying to look at a focused area of people that have a connection, that get to know your neighbor kind of mentality. But to express the concerns of that specific community, because, like for instance, in this community, a lot of their concerns had to do with like speeding and some of the homelessness that they get because of their proximity to the river and the bridge nearby. So it's good because you don't want to take a really global approach and make this maybe a bigger neighborhood watch for this particular group, because then maybe 3 blocks down the road, they have completely different concerns and things that they want to address. So it's really kind of good to allow the law enforcement and the fire department that was out there to look at their concerns and hear them out, and then again come together and form a plan to kind of say, okay, now we have a group and let's kind of be active and come up with ideas how to address some of those concerns. So it was really good.
I don't think I've attended a neighborhood watch after COVID. But prior to COVID, I know that we were doing these pretty regularly. Yeah. And we would also do the National Night Out, which was a lot of these neighborhood watch outings that we had that were established. These were the areas that we would visit throughout the National Night Out. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, I certainly believe that it, like you said, it develops that connection, that rapport that you want with your neighbors. Yeah. You want to be able to feel a connection of who you are, who they are, and at the same time, what common interests do we have, mm-hmm. right? And this is a way I think that we as elected officials can really have an opportunity to reach out to those folks that don't pay attention to mm-hmm. the council meetings, for example, probably don't go out to social media. And you'd be surprised how many times I attended these neighborhood watch meetings, and not a lot of people knew that I was their representative. Mm-hmm. So as the code enforcement officer that put this together would introduce me, then I had an opportunity to speak and say something. Yeah. But other than that, a lot of them didn't know who I was. And it's funny because these pockets that exist throughout my district, it was good to go there. It was good to really establish that connection so that they know who you are. They know that you're actively engaging and trying to make our community better. And having your public safety officers there, and I'll tell you, they do a great job because they want to know, are you actively patrolling around here?
Yeah.
What are we doing about these things? And this is probably where you hear most of the issues that arise from our community, right? Well, hey, when are they going to do something about that light?
Yeah.
There's a speeder that comes through here every single time. And this is where maybe code enforcement and or the public safety officers will have an opportunity to listen, and they make a note of that. And if they need to patrol that area a little bit more, then they will. Yeah. And obviously, they provide you with resources where you can go, how and it's a really good. I think we had probation officers there when I was there, and we also had someone from the Madera County law enforcement. I'm not sure if that still is taking place, but maybe I'll ask you on who was in attendance aside from the public safety officers.
Yeah, I mean, again, that was the main focus. It was, we had the police chief and a few of his officers out there, as well as the fire department were represented. So, and then code enforcement was out there as well. So.
And I can assure you that there are some folks within that neighborhood watch that probably didn't know who their police chief was or who their representative was. Right? I'm not saying that everyone should know, but this is a good way of making that connection. Yeah. And it sparked the interest because I've always said, I wonder if I can do one on my own. Code enforcement always said, well, I mean, I think it's probably best that you have someone else deal with it because then they can lead it. It takes, obviously a commitment for someone to want to be the neighborhood watch lead. And if you are the elected official, then not only are you adding that extra weight in there. So I feel like this is something that I'll bring to my neighborhood. I think it's important for us to do that because statistically, I think it gives neighbors and it gives our residents a very comfortable, trusty way of getting to know the community and getting to know their neighbors. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, that was, for the community where we live, obviously being a little bit of a gated community, it's you would want to feel a different level, I guess, of safety and security. But we've been trying to emphasize over the last couple of months since I've taken over the presidency there, just a get to know your neighbor mentality, because you would be surprised, and the statistics kind of show it, how little things can make a difference. Where even if I know maybe 3-4 houses in my area from my proximity, to just know, hey, you know what? That doesn't look like somebody who would normally visit them. Or what, my neighbors told me they're out of town. Why is there a car now in their driveway? Little things like that really can make a difference. And even so much just to say the fact of, like, do you have your neighbor's phone number? I remember when we moved in, it was one of those things that we had kind of known our neighbor for a little while, but, if their alarm went off, if there was just a, hey, your garage door is open kind of thing, there was no communication. So that was one of the first things we established, is exchanging numbers and ways to contact each other. And I would say that, it doesn't happen too often, but there were a few times where it's just good to know, like, hey, just letting you know this is going on, you might want to be aware of it. And I think that's kind of the core of these things is, it was good to have the meeting. It's good to put your concerns and your thoughts out there. But I think at the core, it's a communication vessel. It's just, again, to say, hey, you live at this house. I happen to see it's like 12, midnight. Your garage is open. Maybe I should call you just as a courtesy to kind of say, hey, you might want to close that, because you're kind of inviting people into that, So I think that's kind of where I see, as it goes along, the benefits of the those kind of community watches.
And now, with that, I mean, obviously that's the physical presence, but you also have the digital presence now with, like, neighborhood next door neighbor, right? Yeah. And I do see that people do engage in the next door neighbor.
Sure.
And being that you're part of this colony or this part of community, then I belong to these estates or this colony, right? Then obviously you're able to share information. But it's important to kind of get an idea. I did notice that there was a lot of good feedback there, as far as, like, hey, watch out, some car got vandalized just last week. Our dash cam or our
The Ring
ring
cameras, yeah.
camera picked up someone walking that's strange.
Yeah.
And it alerts the other neighbors. And because, and here's the thing, right? I believe that these neighborhood watch outings were probably more prevalent during years back, right? Different generations. As we go into a more digital, it's like our appearances are not we're not very present anymore, right? I mean, we look at the remote work from home. We look at even ringing a doorbell nowadays. It's not like I want to rush out there to go grab it. Whereas before, and I'll talk about this in a bit, but before when you rang that doorbell, it's like, wow, somebody's at my house.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's like, no, there's some type of soliciting going on.
Yeah.
Someone from solar, or it's just another package that came in.
Yeah.
So we've become so used to that we've become isolated in a way from gathering, and what you see, and maybe I'll ask you on the demographic side, did you see more, what generation of folks would you say were out there participating?
It's the older. I mean,
Right?
You're not going to see the 20-year-olds or, any of those kind of guys, I think, getting involved. It's definitely the older generation. And I don't know if they're just the more boisterous or that just happens to be the demographic of that neighborhood. But that was definitely, where the trend was, is I would say more of the, older generation.
Yeah, and maybe for me, maybe the concept of like politics and elected officials, you leave that to the older people, right? Yeah. Leave that to the generation that's a little older. Because when I was growing up, that's pretty much what I saw on TV.
Yeah,
I didn't see really young people like my age really engaging in the and again, I was in high school, maybe early college. I didn't really see a lot of young folks in the political view out there, right? It was older people that we felt were wiser because they were there longer, they had more knowledge, more experience, and as I was young, I think we had too many things, running around doing too many things, right? I don't think we were centered yet, or the foundation to establish that, but you do see it. And I think that's why in our city, we try to encourage our youth leadership, right? We want them to be part of this because it's them that are going to be affected moving forward. But did we see any youth at all?
No, and that's where, like, again, when I think about like the core of the program, which is you kind of want a 24-hour presence, right? You mean your idea is, so maybe you get the benefit of some of the older generation by like maybe they're retired, so that means, right now it's 9 o'clock. Everybody else is at work, but they're at home because they're retired, or they're just so they can be the eyes and the ears right now when I'm at work, keeping an eye out for maybe that strange car or whatever. And the younger generation you're talking about, the ones that are out maybe later because they get off work later, or they're out partying, whatever they're doing. So they're your night crew, right? They're the ones that are going to be coming home maybe at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night and notice, hey, there's some little riffraff or some bikes, riding the neighborhood. So I think you kind of really have to have the combination to get them to know their importance, right? Like they're, maybe the younger ones are just thinking like, what much of a difference am I going to make? So that's kind of why they don't really get involved. But I would say, again, looking at our neighborhood, we have a lot of walkers, and people that just walk almost like 24 hours a day. I mean, so that's kind of my eyes and ears. I mean, they're the boots on the ground, right? I mean, I can almost pinpoint. If you go right now, there's probably somebody walking around the neighborhood, So I think you almost want to have like a combination of like, let's start a walking group. And you're going to happen to be from 9 to 2, and this guy, so that you can kind of have some of that presence. So.
Yeah, and it's funny because with the advancement of technology, your cameras can pretty much identify who's walking.
Yeah.
Like after so many captures that it takes on it, it'll recognize it such and such, right? But the interesting part also is that maybe the neighborhoods. Let me ask this question: the owners you're probably older generation. Are we? And we're not. So. I mean, and again, that's a demographic that I think we'd have to extract to see if that is the case. But you see a lot more older generation. Again, established people that have been in these homes for some time. And not to say that there isn't any younger generation. I mean, I'm not sure if there's 20-year-olds there, 30 years, and if you were to break that down, what is the concentration of the majority, right? Is it people over the age of 40? Is it the millennials? Is it the Generation X? Or is it the boomers that are starting to see more of this camaraderie or this neighborhood feeling of wanting to be out there? But, you know, I find it very interesting, Rohi, because, you know, we talk about, and, you know, we'll segue into like the housing market, right? Also, and how that's happening and who's buying the homes and are people even buying? And I mean, you obviously have a business, right? People come in. We've seen some volatility in our economic markets. And again, you know, just yesterday or the day before, it was announced that Amazon will be labeling the amount of increased taxes. But obviously, the administration didn't think that was a hostile action, right? I mean, it could be a disruptive right now, especially when you're trying to overcome this this tariff issue, right? You're trying to impose it to try to solidify the Americans' stance. But now you're starting to see, you know, these giants like Amazon taking a back step and saying, well, I just got to make sure that I let the consumers know that this is why their prices are increasing.
Yeah, you know, well, I'll say that, you know, that it's nothing new. And why I say that is, you know, there's places that we order, you know, our supplies for the shop. And when gas prices started going up, it wasn't too uncommon to all of a sudden start seeing a fuel surcharge being added. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why am I getting a fuel surcharge? I'm just, you know what I mean? Why is it a specific line item? But that was their way to kind of say, well, the price of the goods didn't go up, just the price to get it to you did, you know? So, you know, and it was kind of odd because, you know, you almost want to go back and say, well, how did you justify that number? Is it the weight of the item? Is it just whatever you kind of want to put? It's always going to be $5, whether you buy, you know, 5 pounds of items or a crate full of items, you know? Because there really wasn't, it didn't feel like there was a consistency. But a lot of this, and especially going back to the tariffs, always makes me think it's just another word to be able to price gouge, you know, because again, it's almost like it's going back to this COVID and the shortages and everything is, well, this phone was normally $100, but because of Trump, now we have to charge $150 because of tariffs. Well, yeah, but it was made in America. Oh, but tariffs, it's this, you know, because the word gets thrown to everything, and you start thinking like we buy everything from China. You're like, well, wait a minute, that tomato was grown down the street. Why is there the tariff scare being thrown at it? Oh, it's just because that's just the new word. It's just the new, you know. It was like when we would just say COVID-19. This is $100 more because of COVID. Wait a minute, why is that?
Even though those industries weren't impacted by COVID, right? It's funny.
But it was just another corporate way of charging more and making more money. And I always feel like, again, going back to it, you're going to see, because again, people might not see it because they don't follow the stock, but that's why you're going to start seeing record profits and all these things. And you go back and you say, wait a minute, you charged me more because you said all this like cost us more and price was going up, but then you made record profits. How did that work? You know? And again, I think it goes back to the initial topic, because as things get more expensive, as we start saying, well, hey, this phone is going to cost me more, you know, this thing is going to cost me more, it means that the idea of theft and crime is going to go up, because again, the average person still has, we've gotten so bad over the last 5 years of this baked in, I gotta have it. You know, I don't care what it costs, I don't care what I have to do, but I want this new phone. Well, I can't afford it, so I'm just going to take yours, and that's going to be the way it's going to be. So that's why I think it's very important, going back to the initial topic of, we need to have more neighborhood watch, because I think people need to be ready for more of this theft coming. So.
Well, you know, one thing I could advise folks is, although you don't get the neighborhood watch, you get the weekly jargon. And believe it or not, the weekly jargon serves as a neighborhood watch, because we're keeping you apprised of all the local events that are taking place, and also bringing to you some of the latest updates that we have, right? We can't really discuss items that are are coming up for any type of stuff, but it's items that have already happened here in our community, items that we can discuss certainly freely, neighborhood watch, things that affect our community. We want to make sure you get some of the updates that are taking place. Again, this is one of many that will be going throughout the city, so look out. I think they do a good job of posting that on Facebook as well. I think the city has a really good Facebook page, and it's always listing out. So if you don't follow the city of Madera, do so. Just go into your Facebook through the search button, City of Madera, and follow them, and then you'll get a lot of exciting updates that are taking place.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not really familiar with our meetings, we have our meetings on the first and third Wednesday of every month, and they start at 6. And if you'd love to come in there to give a public comment, by all means, please do so. You have 2 council members here. They're always eager to know what our community would like to see, right? Obviously, it requires a majority to make any policy, but it gives you an opportunity to go out there and voice your opinion.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I mean, I think you said how people can use the tariff as a blanket for all these increases and gouging and what have you. And I mean, to some extent, I think people just, it seems like we become complacent with it. We'll eventually just say, well, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
We're not in that higher power to do anything. So, yeah, it is what it is. So we do vent in our circles, right? We do vent like we do here. But as time goes by, look what happened with the gas prices, right? I mean, they jumped up to almost $6 a gallon. And then again, during that time, exactly what you said, it's the supply chains or what's happening, the cost of fuel. And then it's down now, right? It's down to, I think I've seen
I don't know for how long, because apparently Valero is pulling out of California.
So yeah, and same thing goes with insurance, right? Obviously, that certainly has certain claims, and I think I spoke on that, just touched on it last week. Was insurances are becoming very, very expensive now.
Yeah.
Where you're starting to see not only your typical auto insurance jump close to $1,000 more now, and I hadn't really paid attention to it until I looked at the upcoming renewal, and wow, I mean that's quite amazing. And when I look at my auto, when I look at my home, when I look at all the insurances that we need, I mean practically need insurance to live, right? And you start seeing, and you break that down monthly. I mean, it's quite the penny. So I look at well, how are people making it nowadays? Even though it's baked into their mortgage payments at times, you still have other payments you have to do. And those other payments are increasing at a rate to keep up with inflation and or whatever tariffs you want to call it, because the consumer still has to spend money for groceries. They have to spend money for goods that are manufactured, maybe not here. But even if they're manufactured here, Rohi, this is what kind of gets me, is that even if they're going to be manufactured here, you're not going to see a price decrease. Mm-hmm. There's no way. What company in their right mind would say, I'm going to build it here and I'm going to decrease our prices? The reason why it's out there, it's because you can't afford to bring it down that low, to give back to the investors of a corporation. And this is what we're facing right now. Now, I'm not the economist saying this, but in my opinion, I do think that the receiving end of the people, the consumers, are going to pay a pretty good chunk of that increase.
Well, I think part of that has to do with, again, it's going to have to be a shift, and I know your Elon Musk and kind of how he's running the business with Tesla and SpaceX and such is you're going to have to break from the traditional and say, if the goal is to provide a product or a service, whether it be competitive or whether it be at a fair market price, you're going to have to look at, again, what China has done, which is most of their factories right now are not people; it's robots, and so that's, again, we've talked about it a lot already. It's the sad reality that if you were to bring some kind of mega factory to build cars or whatever it has be, it's not going to be, you have to say no longer the word jobs. There is no more jobs. It's going to be simply, we're going to build this factory. It's going to be 99% robotic, and there's going to be 3 people running it. But guess what? Instead of this cup being $5 because we have to buy it and ship it and everything, it's only going to be $2. And be happy with that mentality, because that's, again, that's when you look at all the books and all the movies and all the guys that talk about the future and where we're going, that's the reality. Is you can't just keep saying, because the cost of labor is going to go up, the cost of insurance is going to go up, everything is going to go up. So the only way to keep this at a fair market price is to completely remove the human interaction, the human involvement in it, or at least reduce it to such a point to where, it's like I said, 2, 3, 4 people. But then at the end of the day, like you said, it also means that corporation has to go with the mindset of what's the best for the people, right? So it's not just corporate greed to say, well, this cup only costs 10 cents, but we're going to still charge $5 because that's what everybody's still paying. It's going to have to say, for the better of the good of the people, we want everybody to be able to afford this cup. And that means that if it only costs us 10 cents, we're going to sell it for 30 cents. We're going to, whatever that margin is, to make a little bit of money, to still be profitable, to be able to still expand. And if you take that model, that's where I would say, like, again, that's the Musk model of, look what he's done with SpaceX, right? He took Boeing and Lockheed, who've made billions of dollars off the government and given us nothing over the, I don't know how many years they've been trying to make these rockets and stuff. And in like a short period of time, he made, I made it cheaper and it's reusable and it's working. And guess what? Now we don't need you anymore, So that's that model. It might not have to be him, but that model, I think, is what needs to kind of catch fire.
Yeah.
And see more people say, like, look, I'm going to make this thing, and guess what? I'm going to make it for the people. I think everybody needs a mic, and we're going to make it as cheap as possible. But that also means it's not going to be a lot of jobs. A lot of technical jobs, because that's always the promise, is more engineers and more of that kind of higher jobs, and get rid of unfortunately, the low-paying jobs.
So in a way, I think we're building America to put you out of a job at some point, and that's.
But that's the future.
I hate to say it, but in this new day and age of technology, where we're trying to electrify everything. I mean, our grids.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're trying to get more electric vehicles on the road, obviously to reduce the gas emissions and what have you, the carbon footprint that we talk about. I mean, obviously, yes, it may be a better air quality, but at the same time, living conditions, we don't know if they're going to get any better. So sometimes these policies, and this is kind of what my perception is, or my perspective, I'm sorry, in how I look at policies that are made. Sometimes they feel good. Mm-hmm. They feel good that this is going to have a leap in our human civilization, mm-hmm. but not really realizing what the consequences are once it's fully played out. Like, what are the effects? Yeah. And I think to have a simulator, or I mean, we have this now, to simulate what could really take place. I think you would see how devastating it would be with the loss of jobs. Because if you automate everything, and we're moving on that with not only trucks, vehicles. We're at the grocery stores, and we're just letting this thing go through because we're adopting to the technology, right? Having to check out. Now you're bagging your own groceries. You're doing your own. Now you're doing a lot of the same work. Now the groceries don't go down. If anything, they continue to go up. Mm-hmm. So it's funny that you're no longer needing a cashier to help you. Now you're the cashier. Mm-hmm. And then they still ask you, you want to donate and round up your money, right? Yeah. Well, Jiminy Christmas, you know.
Want a tip?
Yeah. Well, and this is probably the thing that I hate the most about, it feels awkward, but I mean, maybe it's something that we can talk about and we did, I think, in a previous show, is how you tip, right? But I don't understand how someone can ask me for a tip up front when I'm ready to pay without having the service done yet. I'm paying for the food, but then you want me to add an 18, 20%, and I go, I want to be generous. But I don't want to be. I don't want to be. I don't want to use the word. I don't want to be a fool and say that I'm going to pay for something that I haven't received yet. Although I could say, well, yes, because waiters do deserve it. Yes, that's a different story. But if you're asking me to tip you because you're going to provide me an excellent service, then let that service happen first before I tip you. So I always get to say, can I leave you cash after?
Yeah.
I don't think we. And you know what's funny is that they don't know how to respond to that. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think the system allows us to do that. Well, it's not the system. Don't worry. I'll bring it back to your jar and I'll put it there myself. But anyhow, long story short, it's just that things are moving at such a fast pace, Rohi, that I feel that essentially these policies, these aggressive policies of becoming electrificate, to have electrification vehicles and our grids and automobiles, appliances, what have you, even solar energy. I mean, these are going to be the next jobs of tomorrow because to build that infrastructure, it's going to take a couple of decades to be fully built out. But by that time, when we complete that, where would we be? Are we going to be in a better place? Or will we be facing challenges in our, financially?
Yeah. Well, and kind of bringing it back to the original topic, I think, again, as far as what a neighborhood could do to support where we're going, if you look at things that you don't hear talked about anymore that are similar to Neighborhood Watch, which was like carpooling, you take your kids to school and you see the same car that lives next door to you dropping the same their kid off at the same time, but nobody thinks to say, hey, you know what, I'll take, the Monday, Wednesday, and you take the Tuesday, Thursday, and that doesn't happen anymore. And imagine the resources you'd be saving, But it's, again, we've gone to this mentality of it's me and this is my bubble and I want to control every aspect of my life and not say, well, like you said, hey, we can cut down emissions, we can cut down our gas usage, we can cut down a whole lot of things by just carpooling.
So here's a question for you. I'm glad you brought that. But so then what is public transportation for? Because to some extent, I do see that the buses are busy. Mm-hmm. They're busy moving around.
Talking about public buses.
Public buses, public schools, public buses. I do see that even me, for example, my kids can certainly walk.
Yeah.
I recall growing up, either we walked to school when we were in elementary, and obviously our high school was about 6 miles away, so we had to take the bus, the school bus. But I see them moving around, right? And what I do see also is I see like this pileup of cars trying to drop off their kids because we seem to be, well, we're doing okay, we're doing better. We can take our kids to school now. But that requires every household to pick up their kids and drop them off all at the same time and trying to manage traffic. So this is why you see chaos sometimes in the morning throughout the schools. I mean, obviously they try to do a good job of flowing traffic, but it just becomes something that we've accustomed to. And this is why when I go back to like the generations that still had that experience, I think Generation X, and I don't mean to be biased in this, but I still think that we had that before this technology with phones and what have you. We were still the generation that was out there running around, came home from school. Hey, our parents didn't really worry too much where we're going to be. We kind of fended for ourselves. But there was that system of transportation that was available to us, and riding the bus wasn't a big thing for me, right? If mom took me to school, it's because I was late, or because I had an appointment that I had to. Obviously, I couldn't catch the bus.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I see that I don't know how much of our buses are being utilized, and there's a heavy expense on that as well. We pay a hefty amount of taxes for the schools, right? You talk about this all the time. If I'm paying for these schools, but yet are we utilizing are we using the transportation as we should?
Yeah, and again, I know it could turn into a bit of a hot topic, but I think that's again the argument of when you talk about privatizing some of these industries is this, like you said, is if I'm a for-profit industry and my industry is to get people from one to the other, like a taxi or the Ubers or whatever you want to say, those I think it's a benefit to both people because, and I know this topic came about when talking about some of the public transportation that we have outside of like the school buses, is the cost of if I was to pay an Uber to pick that person up when they needed it at the time that they were ready for pickup versus continual moving buses that may be running completely empty for the majority of the day and waiting for that single person to be ready. So once you count hours of that person's pay that's driving the bus, the wear and tear on the bus, the gas on the bus, to finally pick up that one person and take them to their destination, that Uber ride may have cost maybe $10 to the city or $20. I mean, Madera's not very large, so I can't see it being that much more than that. That's, on a micro scale, that's, you know, it would seem like it would be cheaper for that one piece of transportation to go. Now, obviously, if it expanded to where we were a city that people started using this more, I think you would kind of see it growing into where it's kind of like what we have, I think, with the Max system, where it was kind of like the dial a ride, or where it's an on-demand kind of service. But again, it's always going back to is the end goal to provide the service, or is the end goal to provide it at a cost savings to the city, or to the residents of the city? You know, so I know that battle is always back and forth, because, you know, people would need that service, but I think it's going back to, it's always like you have to have this period of reset. You have to kind of say, like, if ridership is down, and, you know, for whatever those reasons may be, maybe it's because more people have their own cars, or, you know, they don't really need that kind of service anymore. I don't think we should take it as a scary approach and just kind of say, like, okay, well, maybe we look at other avenues to still provide the public service, but at a cost savings to some of the cities.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's why, you know, I think the city has explored options of alternative modes of transportation, right? Right now, like you said, we have the dollar ride, and we have our metro, which is always on a fixed route, you know, obviously taking students from one place to another, even the college out here, Madera College, but also taking those folks that don't drive to these other places. And there's a routine, there is a scheduled time that will always pick you up. And I think there is a service for that, but I think we can do better in refining how we go about transportation. You know, one of the things that, I mean, through the weekly jargon, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to expand and maybe give you opportunities if you are one of those entrepreneurs looking to expand on transportation. Hey, you know, who's to say that at these shuttle stations we put a digital camera that shows, hey, I'm pressing a button because I need transportation. Yeah. But it's there. Someone can see that there's someone really asking for transportation. Therefore, hey, someone in the private industry may say, well, we have location Z, location B, and location A, all wanting to pick up. You have your route system software. Obviously, if you're driven by trying to provide a service, then you're going to do what's in the best interest of that client, which is, in this case, your resident, that you want to take from point A to point B on a short matter of time, saving you the least amount of money. And look, I don't disagree with that. I just don't want to take, because what happens with government is that we're late in the game. We're always lagging behind when it comes to, like, implementing certain policies to be able to catch up to the latest, because it's got to go through so many regulatory policies, changes, boards, commissions, approvals to be able to do that. And sometimes when it's a business, the business needs to make a change right there and then. And it can't afford another 8 months, because 8 months, it means it goes broke. So it's got to take action quickly. Well, with us in government, whether it's schools, whether it's a county, whether it's a city, I think it requires a process. You have to do a study. You got to mitigate it. It takes a whole different type of process there. And sometimes, I think, to your point, is removing that can be more cost effective when it comes to these sorts of like transportation and what have you, right?
Well, I mean, like, again, this could be a whole topic, just a separate week. But I mean, when you look at the duplication of services, right? You have school buses that pick up children, which, I mean, even that, I'm sure the ridership is down dramatically. And then you have public transportation that's essentially smaller school buses running around that doesn't have as much ridership. It seems like even if you were to keep the public transportation side of it, to use the Max or, you know, the different bus systems that we have, the dial-a rides, but to say from 6:30 in the morning to 8 o'clock or 8:30, it's going to focus on school children. Imagine, like, now having those buses being actually utilized in a micro scale, because, again, they're smaller buses, so they can go pick up that amount, those kids, and drop them off. Because I think that was always, for me, I remember the school bus system was, you have your bus stop, picks you up at 6:30, but you still don't get to school till 8, because it's got to make this giant route of picking up all these kids. So I think, again, when you go back down to a micro scale and you say, hey, look, maybe there's a point, and again, through a study, I'm sure, to kind of say, using some of these public service resources that are already there, it's not costing us any more to say, hey, instead of just picking up people, you're going to pick up school kids and drop them off at this school, that we could reduce now our costs on school buses and, you know, bus drivers. And I'm sure they're not liking to hear that, but
Yeah, no.
here's a better utilization of resources instead of just saying, well, we have an abundance of school buses and an abundance of drivers, and now we have a bus that can hold 50 people, but realistically, it's only holding like 5 kids, 10 kids.
You know, I think that's a good idea. I think that if people picked up on that, they would want to see kind of the efficiency of the systems that we have
Yeah.
in our community, right? And obviously, there's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I don't think it's different when you put the resident and or at the middle, right? We're trying to work together to form collaborative solutions to see how we can become efficient, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. I think, you know, the school obviously it's governed by a different board, governed by a different
Sure.
EDCO,
Yeah.
right? The cities are more municipal code. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you put a priority over like, hey, we would like to see this, I mean, how do you join these two together to come and say, well, maybe even county services, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now we're going beyond. But I think, like you said, I mean, because there is a lot of overlapping services where maybe this can certainly become a more efficient and
Correct.
better use of resources to be able to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And that certainly it certainly dictates another episode fully
Sure.
concentrating that. But I like where you're going with that, Rohi. I certainly think that more and more people thinking like that would certainly say, well, if we're in this community, why can't we all work together instead of separating services that do practically almost the same thing, and that's transportation, right?
Correct.
So I agree with that. So I know we're coming up on 46 minutes now. Again, we talked about Neighborhood Watch,
Yeah.
how effective they are. I think Rohi brought up that they were. Did you have something you wanted to share there, Rohi?
Yeah, I mean, just you know, maybe some of those that are interested in kind of starting it up, you know, there's some good resources about how to go about that. And again, the main thing is to remember that it doesn't have to be a large area. You don't have to think like, oh man, I got to get like, you know, all of these houses involved. It can just start as a very micro scale to kind of say maybe the 10 or 15 houses that are just directly connected to you, just to talk to them and say, hey, I'm looking to get this going. You know, what do you guys think? And then reaching out, obviously, to the local law enforcement agencies to schedule these neighborhood watch programs to kind of bring the community together. Because again, there's a lot of tools and resources. It's not just you. You're not going to be at it yourself. So if you're interested in doing it, there's a whole lot of resources that are going to stand behind you to kind of to make it happen. So
Definitely. And again, you know, we do have a great great team, great staff over at the police department with the code enforcement that would help us put this together. If you're interested, reach out to the police department or the code enforcement and let them know that you're interested in establishing a neighborhood watch. And they can bring that out to you, bring all the resources that Rohi was just talking about.
Yeah.
And again, get to know your neighbors, get to know what are the issues around that neighborhood that you can be aware of and how you can find solutions, if any. But with that, I think we're going to close out this show now. We want to thank you again for watching. We ask that you continue to like, share, and subscribe. And follow us, more importantly, because the bigger the following, the more that we can reach out to more folks here in the city. We're trying to become, just become reporters of what we see, right? And not only with the city, but outside the city sometimes, and provide you those updates. So this is where you can get your weekly jargon dose. Every week, every Wednesday, we try to get that going about 8:45. So thank you again. Like, subscribe, and we will now